Don't look away." A torn leather glove fell into the dust, and the whole town held its breath. The mail-order bride stood, a head and a half taller than men. A bull broke the fence, then a body lay by the gate. I was there, hearing silence cry louder than guns. If you ever carried a secret in your shirt pocket, walk with me to the last minute. I stood on May Henderson's porch when the wagon wheel scraped through the stone rut, dust rising into a wall. The wind chime made no sound. The air stood still as if someone held its throat. When the wooden axle stopped groaning, no one looked at the woman about to step down. Every eye fixed on something else, the thing that slipped from the rancher's pocket while he waited. A torn leather glove, brown hide faded to gray, the wrist seam burst, the palm edge worn thin as paperboard. It landed back first, dust coating it along a cracked line. He looked at it like a nameless rock by a creek. No bend, no motion. Only the brim shadow cut his face in half, bright and dark. May set down her glass, left the water ring. "Dropped," she said loud enough for anger to roll a lap around the porch. Morrison leaned against a post, grain pressed into his shirt, hand twined with an old rope, the end tied in a loose bow knot. His chin lifted, mouth bent but soundless. A child sat cross-legged on the step, Eli, with a stick, drawing small squares like fence posts. He raised his head when the glove dropped, then bent again, sketching a fingerless hand. The wagon stopped for good. The horses breathed as if hauling coal from the pit of their lungs. The man stood fixed, dust streak across his trousers, calf bone clear under skin. Nearby, smell of horsehide, old timber, dry moss from the water barrel, untouched for days. I heard the saw blade at the far end shop halt, as if the sawyer looked this way too. Eli poked the glove edge, dragging it toward shade. The man lowered his eyes, tilted his head, one faint shake, like swatting a fly. The boy drew back. The stick stabbed the dirt, quivered. He turned to another line, curving around the severed hand he had drawn. The glove stayed, alone, in a thicker patch of dust. Morrison spat tobacco short of the mark. "What falls gets picked," he spat, but never bent. The porch froze at the level of breath. People lined into a half-arc, each gap wide enough for retreat. I looked at the rancher's boots, soles worn slant to the left, spur on the heel missing one tooth. His right hand opened then closed, sleeve stump creasing a thin fold. Street dust sank slow. The town's heart skipped one beat, waiting for itself to right. The woman's step pushed wide by sun. Her eyes did not rise, did not drop. Only set an iron trunk at her feet, lock chipped, handle stamped with heavy hand marks. Her shadow fell on him before the wind adjusted. It swallowed his, then slid past the rail fence. Behind, like tar, across old paint. The shadow line cut over the glove. On the ground, both lay in the same square of light. A chair scraped inside the saloon, then still. Eli stopped drawing, raised his gaze just enough to meet her throat. He made no sound. He did not need to. His nails dug into the stick packed with dry earth. May glanced at me, caught me thinking of weight. She smirked. "That shadow could cover 2 winters." Her voice touched the table's surface, never bounced. The driver, Fletcher Knox, laid down the whip, his hand trembling just enough for the lash to twitch like a dozing snake. His eyes flicked between her and the man, as though tallying old debts. No one spoke. The road horse, flank slick, snorted through wide nostrils, steam trailing white and fine. A door across the street tapped the wall, stopped, squeaked on rust hinge. The woman asked no names, set her trunk firm, exhaled small, like laying down a mile of road. Her spine stayed straight. Dust slid from her shoulder, glittering in sunlight like sand spilling off a shovel. Morrison pushed his hat back, brow dark with a slow pulse vein. He belched stale whiskey. "Picked the wrong one," he muttered. "Enough for close ears, meant for none." The wind shifted. A blush of wildflower from Henderson's yard, brushed half a second gone. Her eyes fixed on the fence, on the cracked end post, where the wire loop loosened at the third twist. That gaze judged nothing. It measured. It weighed. The porch knew everything had just tightened one notch. I did not feel fear, only that the town's rhythm chose to drag one beat slower, as if pulled by intent. All eyes stayed fixed. The torn glove in the dust, the spread of her shadow, and the small rancher, standing pinned to ground by a thin nail. He never bent to lift, only raised his hand to the brim, turned it a notch to block the sun. Asked, young left it, like one who knows when to touch a scar and when to walk around. Eli stood up, then sat down again. The stick tapped the wooden step edge 3 times, pressing down each unspoken word. He drew another line, linking the fingerless hand to a small shape like a post. I could not read its meaning. I only recall he looked at the glove longer than at the woman. The rancher straightened his back, no taller for it. His beige shirt torn at the elbow, the frayed edge dark with old sweat. A thread came loose, swinging with breath. He set the bare hand on his belt, thumb hooked in leather, the crack in the hide marking a line. He turned his face, eyes brushed past her as though over fence rails. They never stopped. I waited for a greeting. It did not come. I waited for the driver to speak. He only coughed, for dust. Morrison pulled a blade of grass to chew, bit one end, rhythm tapping like measuring patience. May wiped the counter, wiped a clean spot. The cloth hissed across the grain, standing for words. From the yard, a hen darted across, clucking sharp for its brood. It skimmed past the glove, never touched. The chicks stalled a breath, curved around like water skirting a stone. Seeing that, I thought of the things people learn to go around to keep from catching. No order needed. The man drew a shallow breath, the smell of dry leather from that glove rising in someone's memory. His, perhaps, ours, perhaps. Hard to say. A speck of sunlight slid over the back of his hand, showing one silver hair. The woman turned her face toward the fence as if the matter lay there, the twisted wires, the cracked post, the earth swollen by old roots. She tallied with her eyes, never hurried. Someone gave a faint laugh, not of humor, a laugh like scraping throat. "What kind of man lets his wife cast shadow?" May said, with less breath than usual. The words dropped on the porch, then vanished, like water spilled on ground already dry. Morrison slapped the rope against his thigh. "What falls gets picked," he repeated, but his eyes fixed on the woman. The man answered no one. He let the glove lie, his brim already set. Her shadow had edged away from his, for the sun had gone half a hand further. The horse flicked its tail at a fly that missed. Fletcher lifted his hand, as if remembering reins to gather. The trunk's loose lock tapped its body with a single clack. Eli rose full. He stepped down the stair, halted at the line of shade and light. His stick pressed the dirt beside the glove, not touching. He drew a thin circle round it, never closed, left a gap small as a fingertip, then lifted his eyes to the man. His look never asked. It only placed the question, leave it there still. Lifted her trunk with one hand, easy as a bucket empty. Her other hand slid into her coat pocket, held there as if steadying something only she knew. She passed the glove. Never touched, never stepped on. We, the watchers, saw the unclaimed fall turn into a marker unseen. From there, every word after would have to cross it. I do not know who understood it then, or how clear. I only knew the flies had returned, the horse lungs beat even again, and whispers grew tales of sigh. The hook fixed there, not by clever line, by a thing left in dust, and a man who never bent, and a woman who said nothing, standing in her own shadow, stretching it over the weak fence. On the ground, Eli's dry chalk circle still left a gap. Whoever walked would have to choose, step in or go around. I saw the town, for a short slice, choose silence, only silence, and wait. That night May's lamp smoked heavy yellow light smeared the wall like fat. The table bore carved names of those gone long. The ones left scraped chairs, knocked cups for noise, faces never smiling in the eyes. Man small, wife big, balance sure enough. Someone tossed, like throwing bone for dogs to test. None drank for thirst. They drank to see how far he'd wear shame. Dust lines clung to her hem, but she sat straight, turned sideways, never leaned. The iron trunk rested by her feet, her fingers pinched the handle, not tight, not loose. He chose the wall table where paint still showed. His shoulder never touched it, left a slit like breath. May set the bottle down, never slid it to center, left it offset toward him to see if he would reach across. Morrison came late. He shouldered the door, the wind pushing stale drink inside. The rope twined on his wrist rasped like a small snake. "Well, boy?" He slapped his gut, his smile pushing fumes. Men behind him thickened his shadow on the floor. They claimed space with wide elbows, with steel-heeled boots dragging. Eli crawled beneath the doorway table, his stick scratching squares in the dirt floor. He drew one small figure by one taller 2 fingers, then wiped with his palm, never looked up. A kick brushed his back. He gave no cry, only switched the stick to his other hand. Laughter mixed with glasses clinking, like stones pitched on tin roof. May tilted her head at him. "Fine choice," she said low, eyes cold as creek rock. He answered by laying 2 fingers. The mill stopped its creak. Night stood with arms folded. Inside the lamp flame fluttered, small as a beast, panting. I saw her hand slowly leave the trunk's handle, rest on her thigh, thumb brushing the thick seam, her eyelids still. Her jaw muscle twitched once, then lay quiet. He poured whiskey into the glass, the sound falling over itself like sand into a jar. Lamp smoke clung to his hair. The sweat of day and the voices of night wound round his neck like a damp cloth. No one wished to leave before another. All waited for a small mistake, some word to hang in the air and be shot down by laughter. He raised the glass to his mouth. Lips touched rim, not drink. His breath left a faint ring on the glass, then vanished. His other hand clenched beneath the table, knuckles whitening, then slackened. Not from anger, only because there was nothing to hold. When nothing in hand, the hand finds itself. May stood behind the counter, wiping a dry place. Back and forth, the cloth hissed light. "Drink," she said, never looking at him, her eyes set on his shadow warped on the wall by lamp fire. He drank, swallowed like one takes a small stone, letting it fall and stay there. She sat behind him, far enough not to block another's gaze. Her breath steady. At times I heard her dress brush the trunk, faint. The trunk's edge dented as if struck by stone along the road. Her large boot planted on clean plank, heel fixed at a crack in the wood, never sliding. Half her body in shade, half in light. Morrison leaned forward, tapped the bottleneck with his nail. "Say something," he pressed. He liked filling silence with noise he made. He hated any space not bearing his name. He bent near the man's ear, his breath sour. "Or do you sit quiet, let another speak for you?" The words fell, slid across the table, stuck nowhere. He set the glass down, careful as laying a knife on dry cloth, wood marked by a wet ring. He drew his finger through it, splitting the water in two. He looked not at Morrison, not at anyone. Then he pushed the glass toward the center, leaving himself a half joint apart. A small act, but it shifted a line. Eli crawled from under the table, crouched by the chair leg. He lifted his face upward, peering through the gaps between grown hands. He touched no one. No one touched him. He laid the stick on his knees, patting it as if soothing. On the floor, his unfinished fence squares waited. "First night, and still quiet," a voice called. May set another glass, asked no owner. She tapped its bottom to the table, sound carrying to the far corner, then died. Distraction. Morrison went last, glanced back. He looked at her, no mask on his scorn. She gave him nothing to hold. He left, taking his rope and the itch in his hand. The night hollowed. The town slept like a python with prey inside. Morning, the shout broke like water flung cold on heads. "Bull! Fence down!" Voices cut the wind, struck doors, rattled roofs. The bull had breached the north fence. The last post rotted, grain split like dry earth, wire sprung, flapping like fish gut. It stood in Morrison's yard, tearing into the bushes he planted for show. Red flowers, white. Earth and roots ripped up like opened entrails. People ran, boot nails mixed with rubber soles, with tools loose in hand. Dust light dulled their eyes. I saw May on her porch, hand shielding brow, squinting. She said, "It's here." She did not run. She watched. Eli drove his stick into dirt, left his fence squares undone. The man stood at the fence, eyes locked on the brake, not on the bull, on the cause. The wood split at the post neck, the crack cutting deep. He might have touched it, but his hand stuck to his belt as if glued. His chest rose shallow. They called him. Called the town name they'd given him, not the one his mother had. The bull rammed Morrison's iron trough, water spilling muddy as from a swamp. Morrison cursed, swung the rope in loops, never threw. He stood behind, waiting another to move first. His mouth twisted like the rope in hand. "Hold its back! Hold the horns!" they shouted. But the horns were sharp and wet. It turned, and light in every eye wavered. She stepped off the porch before any saw. Long stride, decisive. Her dark skirt brushed her knee. Boots sunk shallow prints. She did not run. She only walked fast. The wind struck against her. Hair whipped her neck. She hooked her wrist in the trunk handle by the saloon, dragged it tight to the wall, like closing a door left open. Then she went straight toward the beast. I saw her shoulders lift a little when the first sound of skull against wood broke. Not fear, only one measuring with the body. She looked to the ground before Morrison's fence, where old mud baked into a crust. She shifted footing on softer patch to keep balance if she must turn. Her eyes fixed on the beast, but they counted people. Men gathered in a half-arc, backs pressing one another for fear. May drew her scarf over hair, tied it like one prepared fault never mended in time. She had reached Morrison's gate. The bull suddenly stopped in the yard, breathing hard, tail slashing, earth spraying. It snapped its head, white eyes showing. A young man charged with rope slipped, fell, his back scraping a trench in dirt. Men shouted. She did not. She raised her hand as if telling something to stay. Nothing stayed. They thought him coward. They spoke without speaking. They had the story ready for tonight. The big woman leapt in. The small man stood crouched by the fence. They had cast the rolls in their heads, only waiting to clap. Morrison spat, wiped his mouth, laughed. "Grab the horns, girl," he tossed, voice hollow as a tin can. She did not look at him. She set her hand on the fence post, leaned, shifted weight to her left leg, and climbed over. No rope, no stick. Her boot touched the ground on the other side so light the grass never bent fully. She stepped once more, spread her palm as if offering it empty. No hand reached to pull her back. No one dared brush the elbow of a person stepping into horns. Just then, he moved. No shout, no rush. He bent, clutched the fence top, heel clawed earth once, then climbed. It was not graceful. His trousers caught on sprung wire, tore a thin mark. He yanked it free with one jerk, then crossed. Behind me, breaths drew at once. One man muttered, "Oh." Another cursed. Morrison locked his tongue, face darkened half a beat. He ran after her, not to save, only not to be left on the wrong side of the tail. His stride shorter, he moved at half again the pace. His hat slipped, he never fixed it. A wet lock clung to his temple. His hands drew nothing. No rope, no knife, only bare hands with no clear end. But he went. She heard. I saw her shoulder lower a fraction, as one acknowledging a sound with no need to turn. She never waited for him. She never quickened. The space between them held, soft as a rope neither taut nor slack. The bull swung its head, breath flaring twin jets. Its forelegs planted wide, ready to split earth. All the town's noise collapsed into one small gap between its breath and her open hand. This side of the fence swallowed dry, throat veins stretched thin. I thought he would call her name. He did not. He stood in her shadow, first time since last night, but this time by his own choice. The people had no chance to rewrite their story. I saw confusion ripple across their faces like breeze on water. What they had named coward slipped a finger's length away. No claps, no cheers, no one willing to admit their measure was wrong. I heard flies return, and my own heart's beat lurch, then correct. At the garden's edge a red flower rolled, its petal clotted with dirt, like a scrap of meat forgotten. He stood there, not behind, not ahead. He chose a place without words. Perhaps no one saw. I saw. And I knew, from there, the tale would not run the groove they had scored with knives into tables, because some steps small never retreated, and some hands opened without grasp. The rope between those two was not tied, yet it was there, clear as rust iron in morning sun. The crowd by the fence would have to learn to stand longer still, just to watch, just to wait for what would change first, the bull or the people. The bull blew steam, nostrils ballooned, heat brushing the wrists of those nearest the fence, its eyes red with dirt and rage. Tail lashing, flies burst apart. Earth spat in grains, sticking to the trampled flower. Its horn scraped wood, rang a dry metal sound, for wires still clung to the post. Morrison's yard lay wrecked like a market after brawl. She stood before it, not too near, not too far. Her feet slanted, knees bent slight, shoulders dropped a notch. She tilted her head, words fell low. Her mouth barely opened, the sound dropped to dirt before spreading. I heard no words, only rhythm. One, then one, then one. He stood behind, half off to her side, one hand hooked to his belt, where the holster shined more from touch than fire. His finger traced the rim, found the gun that had yet to fire. The chill of metal through hide straightened him half an inch. Then his hand stopped on leather, went no further. I saw the vein in his hand surface thin. Morrison cracked his fingers, joints loud. Yell at it, he rasped, voice broken like a dull saw. Charge it, head on, grab it. A young man nodded, machine-like, but none stepped. They looked at horns. They looked at the hollow gap between horns and their own throats. They weighed the thirst to act against the habit of swiveled, catching every hiss of words. Its back sweat beaded like dew on hot hide. The smell of hide sweet, the grass crushed, the rust of wire. She never changed tone. Her eyes never left its eyes. Her shoulders held like a market scale. She moved one step, not threat, not retreat. A swarm of flies landed on the beast's ridge, then scattered when she raised her hand chest high, palm empty, fingers shut. The men's voices behind sank lower, as if all throats swallowed once. He breathed. His chest rose barely. The brim of his hat had tilted long ago. He had not fixed it. Dry mud at his trouser hem cracked into flakes, and when he shifted weight forward, one piece dropped. At his side, his hand still fixed to the belt as if nailed. In sunlight, the gun's muzzle dark as another animal's eye lying still. The bull snorted hard. Spit foamed up its neck. It swung its head, horn slicing low, tearing a young rosebush from earth. The sapling turned mid-air, fell where someone might replant it if they wished. No one bent. They waited for the gunshot. They had placed it in their heads, set it in this silence to fit. They wanted an explosion as a marker, to know when the story had reached halfway. They needed that sound to tell it right at home. "Shoot," someone whispered, like feeding an exam cue. Morrison wrinkled his nose, his whole body ready to leap in to replace the missing sound. He did not draw. His hand left the holster, slid half a span, stopped at his shirt pocket. His fingers pulled out what none expected, a torn leather glove, not puffed with newness, not clean, not oiled. The wrist seam burst, threads frayed white, the palm so thin it might tear further with one pull. He clenched it. His thumb pressed a stiff old stitch hardened like tendon. The other hand opened in air as if to balance. I thought of the smell of old leather in a shut room, dust layering picture frames. I thought of an afternoon no one cared to recall, men circling a table, few words, someone placing this glove in a drawer and closing it. Closing with it, the shot that never saved anyone. I did not speak it. No one did. Morrison laughed sharp. "Glove for gun?" he sneered. His laugh had no teeth. The young man beside him spat, splashed his own boot. He cursed low. Something on the others' faces drained. They knew. Not all men choose the same thing to hold now. Eli fixed on the glove, his eyes narrowed smallest to dust. He let the rail go, traced a curve in the air, as if recalling the circle he had left open. Then he clutched the rail again, his lips parted, closed. Something in it had been set down, as though someone had untied an unseen rope from its neck. He held the glove at his belly. His torn beige sleeve rose faint at the elbow. Across his hand ran an old scar, paler than the rest. He looked past her shoulder, through the shimmer of heat, and never raised his arm. The gun in its holster stayed cold. The glove in his grip grew warm with skin. They no longer knew where to set the shot. They looked at each other, their faces refusing confusion. Morrison shifted, his boot ground a dry twig, crack. He startled at his own noise. May pulled her scarf loose, smoothed a fold as one irons an old thought flat. She did not stare at the glove long. She was old enough to know. Some things are only glanced at. I remembered the first morning, the glove falling in dust, and the man never stooping. Now it lay in his hand, not as ornament, not as charm, only as a thing, clenched to keep the hand from doing otherwise. The bull stopped. Its head dipped as if a stone had been set on its nape. Its eyes less red, its breath even. A fly settled on its lid. It never shook. The bent trough ceased leaking. Metal quit its groan. The flowers quit their trembling. In that silence, she raised her hand an inch more and set it on its neck, behind the left ear where hair darkened with sweat. The beast sighed, not human, but enough to loosen throats around. It tilted its head into her hand as a child pressing into its mother's palm. I despised easy similes, but the picture forced itself before I could drive it out. She stayed there for 3 breaths, then slid her hand down, slow as drawing a string. One does not wish to snap through the hot hide to the meeting of nerve and pulse. She turned slight, aligning herself to its shoulder. Her other hand stretched back, wordless, signaling space to step away. No one moved forward. None needed words. She turned half her face, neck vein raised, with held breath, yet her voice held. She was not speaking to men. She spoke to what stood between fear and rage. Then she walked. One small step. The bull followed equal. Its tail hung loose. No new holes in earth. The heat eased. She faced the fence, let her hand drop. Someone brought rope. She refused. No need. She led it by distance, by stance, by the mark of her hand. The people split as water around a drifting log. The crowd exhaled like a valve released. Teeth bit, tongues to damn words. Morrison clenched change into sound. He swallowed. The knot remained. I stood close enough to hear the leather scrape against his skin, faint. He looked at no one. Not her, not the bull. His eyes fell on a loose, third twist of wire on the fence, the first spot she had fixed her gaze when she stepped off the wagon. He knew he had chosen silence again, not mistaken, not late. Chosen. This silence was not the saloon's last night, silence for nothing to say, nor the silence of a coward. It had shape, weight, an edge. It cut the throat passing through, leaving a thin mark, no blood, outward. The outside did not see. The inside did. Eli slipped from the rails, ran along the fence to keep pace as she led the beast past, his feet falling into his own shadow. He bent, picked a red petal clotted with soil, brushed it once, let it drop. He kept. Nothing. He lifted his head, caught sight of the glove clenched in his hand. He froze, half a beat, then ran on, voiceless. She brought the bull from the yard, through the open gate. The men cleared way, not with hands, but by pulling bellies in, shoulders back, making themselves smaller. The bull passed, as in dream, its sweat cooling, its hide smell faint. When their shadows left the ruined yard, noise returned but dared not rise. They spoke low, like in a house with sickness. I did not listen. My eyes stayed on his hand. The glove lay there, like a strip of hide left from another who had gone, warmed now by the one still standing. He loosened half a finger's width, as if to put it back in the pocket, then tightened. His throat swallowed once more. The knot remained. On the fence, a sprung wire caught a black hair. Wind stirred it like a wave. I thought no omen. Only matter brushing matter, leaving trace. As the glove on hand left trace, as silence on throat left trace. No ledger kept such marks, but they stayed. She vanished past the stalls. The bull followed, head swaying heavy, horns quiet. The crowd scattered into their own shapes. Morrison dropped on the step, rubbed his face, as though to wipe laughter from air. May went inside, counted glasses, each tapped light and set apart. He did not go. He stood till the sun slid far enough for fence shadow to stretch long. I came nearer, not for silence. The edged silence remained in his throat like a small bone, not killing, but remembered with each swallow. News spread like dust, not for brag, for tongues, itching hands. Through the day more came to May's than usual, not thirsty, thirsty for tale. May poured, steady, eyes cold as a drought frame. He stood at the bar, beige shirt with a new stripe of dust. She sat near the door, back straight, hand on thigh, thumb stroking the thick seam. The iron trunk leaned against a wall, dented edge, facing the door like a penned beast. Morrison paced the porch like a dog circling stock. The rope on his wrist slapped his thigh, each step sound dry. He laughed over faces, bumped shoulders, asked, "All right?" Never waiting, he stared at her, unmasked. She gave him nothing. May wiped the counter, her hand stopped at the old crack. She lifted her face, dropped words like a pebble into water. "You still keep your father's glove?" Her voice not loud, just enough for his ear, her eyes steady. "He died a coward like that." The sound sank like a nail. No one laughed. No one plicked tongue. Some looked away from his face, stared at the crack in wood, as if finding a hole for the words to crawl. He gave no answer, only touched the pocket edge where the glove lay. Touched through cloth, never drew it out. A vein showed on his hand, faded. I saw Morrison's lip curve, small. He liked it. The words bent where he wished. He chewed them in his mouth, swallowed, kept. Eli stood on the step, stick in hand, traced half a circle, stopped, eyes raised into the saloon. He listened with eyes. He knew no word, coward. He knew the look after the word. He turned away. He left not for fear, for none needed, nothing to flee. She watched half a beat, then turned to the door. The horse outside swished at flies. The tree's shadow reached another hand. Evening came with dust-clinging calves. They pulled wire, raised the north post. Broken stake replaced with fresh wood, resin thick. Wire drawn taut. The third loop tightened with pliers, sound high. She swung hammer, drove nail deep. Sweat ran her temple down her neck, no cloth needed. He pulled wire, left hand gripping, right twisting, palm welted red. They spoke not. Others spoke for them. "That's right, fence it strong, painful, but enough for others to see." He was performing. He needed audience. A few voices muttered, "Hey!" No one stepped in. Here folk were used to watching, to see if a matter grew or shrank by itself. He, the rancher, stood by the wire. He did not call names. He did not yank hands away. He looked at that hand, being held, and at the hammer, the handle trembling then steady again in her grip. His face unchanged, only his throat swallowed without water. He laid the pliers down, pulled wire tighter by one notch, as though binding fence could stand for any other act. May stood back, her eyes gone dark. She said, "Enough," but to the wind. The wind carried it nowhere. Morrison let go only after he saw the crowd had looked enough. He brushed his shirt, slipped past her back, shoulder grazing her cloth on purpose, left no mark, left a memory. She drove the nail home, hammer striking once more as a period. He, the man, shifted pliers to the other hand, hid his reddened palm in pocket. I thought of the glove in the other. None pulled it out. None swung a thing. On the fence, a sparrow landed, cocked its head at the strip of leather in his hand. No, at the empty air between his hand and the pocket. Night returned with the chill of well water on the neck. May's place was empty, strange. She washed glasses in short strokes, no clink. Morrison never came. He left his laugh outside, like boots on a step. She sat on the porch, hair bound with hemp cord, eyes on the hoofprints not yet dry. He stood by the new post, palm stroking fresh grain top to root, not catching skin. He still stroked. Eli sat on the step, drew fence squares unfinished, this time closed a circle. His stick moved slow till the ends met. He lifted his head, looked at him. He never looked back. He kept stroking wood. His other hand, the one with the glove, rested on pocket edge, as if checking whether a knife's still there. He did it thrice, then let it fall. I heard crickets start, thick, then halt. A shadow crossed the road. No one called. May drew her curtain down half a span, leaving room for wind and eyes. She exhaled between teeth as though careful not to snap a fine thread. No one spoke the words, "Died a coward." No one returned them to May. The words lay somewhere on the ground, like a nail in straw, waiting a foot to find. He never stooped to pick them.
Howled twice, stopped, howled once more, smaller. Wind crossed the dry corn, leaves brushing like hands in dark. I lay on hard bed, heard the new fence speak. Young wood shrinking in cold, one thock sigh. Somewhere a trough rattled as though leaned on, then left, then a twig broke, then still. No sound strung to meaning. They did not strike the ear like shots. They woke no one. May told later she heard a footstep cross her porch, light, not drunken. She never opened. The old know which steps deserve opening. Eli slept on his own step, head on arms, stick fallen crosswise, its tip aimed at bare earth before the new gate. She was not at the saloon. He was not at the saloon. Where Morrison was, all guessed. None said. Night swallowed guesses, to spit them with dawn. Morning they found Morrison at his cattle gate, his back against the post, body slipped down like a sack loosed of rope, eyes open, looking over his shoulder toward the plain, where nothing but yellow grass and quarreling crows. His shirt damp with soil at the right shoulder, a black smear as if a hand pressed while dirty. On his chest, a small hole, not much blood, enough to color the cloth. No one asked, who first? They stood in a ring, leaving air enough to pass between without touching. May came after, scarf wound once. She looked face to hand to foot, then across to the new fence, wood still smelling of resin. She never sighed. She set 2 fingers on the cracked post, testing the one thing still where it had been. At Morrison's feet, in soil softened by night dew, the mark of something soft pressed. Beside his boot prints, facing, lay a thing all new, a torn leather glove. Not clean, not new. Wrist seam burst, palm worn, one edge clotted with mud. It lay not far from the hole in his shirt, not touching, but near. Eyes slid toward him, the rancher. He stood there outside the ring, hand bare, pocket flat as if empty. Hat brim over eyes, morning sun cut his cheek with a diagonal. He did not step forward. He did not step back. His throat did not swallow. It had swallowed yesterday. Now it was still. She stood 2 paces off, never touching. Her eyes moved from the glove to the hole in the shirt, then stopped on the twisted wire of the neighbor's fence, the place that had been tightened. Whose glove? Someone asked, voice flat, as if asking what tree this was. No one answered. The words dropped, lay beside the glove. No one picked them up. Eli slipped through grown legs into the ring. He knelt, his knees pressed 2 round marks in soil. His hand reached, lifted the glove. His small fingers slipped into the wrist, tested once. He looked into its palm as into a cave mouth, then raised his eyes, past Morrison's shoulder, toward the empty plain. Unblinking. I thought someone would shout, "A brig!" in a Briggs.
Then he set it back in the same hollow of mud, turned the tear downward, wrist toward the stalls. He withdrew, soil clinging his fingertips. Brig is never wiped. He rose, stepped back through the gap, eyes fixed on the glove, until a grown man's body blocked his sight. Morrison still leaned, nothing more to do for him. Some folded arms, some removed hats. May glanced at him, the rancher, once, not long. She asked nothing. She counted no glasses. She went to the new fence. Her fingers brushed the third twist, where they had tightened yesterday. She lifted her hand, left a thin sweat print on steel. Secure, she said, alone. Wind pulled rust, leather, damp earth into one unnameable blend. Some cleared the body. Some cleared the words. They scraped spare syllables from mouths to keep from chewing them again. He turned away first, needing no sign, not fast, not slow. She followed, 2 steps behind, paving the road with silence. Eli picked his stick, walked along the new fence, its tip clicking each nail head, small as rain on tin. On the ground, the glove lay where it had been placed. The mud would dry. The hollow would fade. But those who saw would remember. No one wrote it down. No one found ink. No one needed. In this town, sometimes one thing left still was enough to turn the story's path. And that morning, the path was chosen, without a second shot. After, the town ran slow as cold oil. They never married. They never spoke of parting. Each morning I saw them carry timber to the yard, brace the weak spans, replace worn wire, drive nails steady as keeping time. She lifted posts on her shoulder. Her arms held wood without tremor. He paced off gaps in steps, 4.5 each, never wrong. No names called. When one leaned, the other braced. When one pulled, the other held. The talk on the street died, not from understanding, from his eyes. They were not loud, only straight. When he looked, mouths closed of themselves. May still kept her saloon, washed slow, wiped the counter at the same crack. She spoke less. When they bought dry bread, she added a pinch of salt, no charge. No one said thanks. The door swung. The hinge sang one familiar note. Shut. The stall smelled of fresh straw. The bull stood under shade, horns flicking lazy flies. It watched them work as one watches still rain, not caring, but knowing. The new wires drew tight, steel catching sun sharp. At the north fence, the new post drew fence squares in dust, then brushed them away with his palm as though unwilling to keep them. He never entered the stall. He stood outside, tapped his stick on his boot toe, listened to the small knock, then walked. When he looked up, the man nodded once, a nod neither invite nor dismissal. It was enough. Evening settled with rust smell warming. May drew her curtain half, as each day. The sun slid its line across the fence, left angled shadows like unread script. In those shadows they still walked side by side. No words wasted, no unease. Like two bearing a heavy basket, each hand to a handle, lifting, setting, lifting. Night, the crickets took their shift. The bulls chewing hummed under. Well water poured into basin, rang clear. They washed hands in the wooden trough, black grit sliding from nails, falling in even dots. On the sill, salt dried to a thin white line. I stood outside, the lamps yellow casting a square. Inside,
little moved. But weight grew, quiet, like sacks of sand stacked till chest high. She kept a whetstone broad as a plate by the porch foot. When free, she poured water, its face shone like fisheye. She drew blade on stone, left hand steady, right pulling, scrape even, like someone erasing old words from timber. The steel ran its line, she turned wrist, drew back, never watching passers. The act was mending a tool to cut, not show. Sunlight on steel made strangers lower eyes. He sat, a span off, on the worn porch step. On his thigh, a strip of old leather, seam burst, palm worn thin. Awl in his right, beeswax in his left. He drew thread through wax till smooth, measured forearm's length, folded, tied knot. The needle pierced leather, the other hand caught, pulled, thread slid with a sound faint as a gnat. Each stitch spaced the width of a pinky nail. He did not hurry. When the awl missed and tore wrong, he drew it back slow. No curse. A bead of blood swelled at his fingertip. He put it to his mouth, iron taste fading, then worked on. On the surface of the hide, the old crack began to close under the stitches. Not turning the thing new, only keeping it from tearing further. He pressed his elbow on his thigh, back slightly bent, eyes on the thread until the knot tucked neat inside flesh and skin. He did not wear it. He only mended so the hands would not idle. Beside him, a stray cat from nowhere curled, eyes half shut, pretending sleep. The scrape of the knife came. Music. He picked up the loose thread that fell, wrapped it around a finger, the cord pressing skin deep, then freed it, laid it on his knee, let the wind take it. No one told him not to sit close to the needle. He knew. He did not put his hand in the line of stitch. The bull by the fence flicked ears at flies, chewed slow, eyes half shut. Wind off the hill carried dry grass and salt sweat. The stripe of sun on the porch shrank. She set the knife upright, wiped the blade on an old rag until no more black stain. He tied the last knot, bit the thread off. The tip drooped like an old man's hair. Both packed their tools at once, without a word. What was in their hands returned to its place, not an ending, only a pause. At times, she ground the blade longer than needed. At times, he stitched an already firm seam with one more pass. I know the kind who use small work in place of words. One night, rain scratched thin over the tin roof. They sat in the porch without lamp. The knife reflected the gray sky into a long streak. The hide lay on the table like an amulet, unworn. The bull still grazed, the season still dry. Only the stitched seam glimmered under distant lightning. Then went dark. One morning, wind from the salt flats came earlier, the sky clean as if wiped. He drove a nail into the porch post, a wood post, browned, with claw marks left by years. 3 blows, no more. The nail sunk deep, head flat. He reached into his shirt pocket, drew the piece of hide. Did not try it on. Did not smell. Did not kiss. Only lifted it, hooked it on the nail, left it hanging. The torn leather glove swayed, the invisible fingers pointing groundward, wrist turned in to the post. Wind passed. The hide quivered like a small flag owned by none. Each gust, the white thread flashed like fish teeth. The glove no longer meant covering a hand. It became a sign, not threat, not welcome. Just a border drawn by a thing, once kept in a pocket, now exposed. Sun pierced the worn hole in its palm.
cast a warped circle on the post, a brazen, tired eye. She stood inside the porch, back on the doorframe, watching the glove's shadow more than the glove itself, her face unchanged. When wind struck, glove knocked the post, a small sound. She did not flinch. She pulled her hair tie higher, cooling her nape. In the pen, the bull coughed once, then quiet. May carried a tray to the steps, halted midway at the hanging thing. She nodded short, like checking a ledger. She did not recall the hole. He sat, drew a short line with a stick under the post, no loop, no close. Left a small gap, as he once did the first time. Then he stood, stepped back, lifted his face. No smile, no frown. He stored the sight in his own place. He walked the yard, checked each post, one tap each. At the porch corner, he raised his head, looked at the hanging, like a task done. No pride. His hands clean, nails thinly lined white. He did not take it down, nor told anyone why it was there. She came behind, touched his shoulder lightly so he knew someone near. Both stood, a glance, then split to either side, carried on with the day. Noon, the glove's shadow shrank to a blot. Evening, the shadow lengthened, stretched onto the porch floor, dragging finger shapes across wood. Night, the west wind turned. Glove tapped the post a few more times, like counting, then still. Days later, dust filmed the leather thin. Sun warmed it into smell. The seam held firm. No hand touched it. From then, those passing knew their way. No one reached through fence to test the wire. No one pressed the gate with shoulder. Those invited entered. Those not stood on the porch, eyes on the nail, and understood. I understood, too. Not all needs words. Some things are large enough to hang to the wind and heavy enough not to fly. The rest, each makes a round in their own mind. Then silence. When the dust settled, only the bull chewing cud and the needle stitching hide remained. No further words explained. The fence stood firmer. They returned to their work. The torn leather glove, first fallen on dirt, then held in hand, at last hung in wind. One object, three meanings, discarded, chosen, then a silent boundary. In a land where words often tear, sometimes mending is knowing where silence holds and fastening one's part sure. If you have your own glove, a thing, a habit, a silence, where would you put it? Left behind, clenched, or hung as a sign? Leave just a short line. The rest, each understands.